Chop no for beats alone. Problem.
Agriculture no salone. Waapp don't come for feed me. So let we all let me own it. It's Waapp, Waapp, Waapp. We go feed we nation. Waapp, Waapp, Waapp. Agriculture go build we nation. We know say the benefits are for we all of. So Waapp wants only farmers them for corporate too. We go put this gas on the air, rest plenty, oh. We go eat, we go sell, we go feed mama salon.
Yeah. I kick you up for a day till I get Waapp. I can't touch him. Tangi mo bulay. I can't maluka. I mimi yo wa plapa bati. I can't maluka. I mimi yo wa yukaya bati. I fool my water, my thing, I'm gonna fuck maluka me. Batale, come on, Kabonga. To walk on a maluka me, I made my Waapp. So to Billy Nutane, no, Mama, I'm from Mammy.
Waapp got to a $2 chipo. Nyakebia Mama dole chipo, Wengeliaku, Yamupala Pawala, Amake for Dole Moyabala. Ha! Waapp Huilona, Sangabuelona, Katala Hakisia, Belona. Como hi owa kemo koigasna, como hi abia kemo tegasna.
Family, good afternoon. We don't come back to another edition of the Waapp on Focus program. In this special program, they focus on, of course, within Waapp, don't they do? But it will be slightly different. Well, until now, no, we ministry, the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Food Security, don't get new aid man. We sit down and tap now. We now master sabi person for agricultural research for push agricultural development go before in this country. And this particular program, they specifically focus on what you think about agricultural development, especially research. Since in a researcher, a renowned one for that matter, we don't left an indelible mark in the sands of time as far as agricultural productivity concerned. We don't able to come up with a variety we renowned globally. We be made in 1994. It been win an international prize, and I think say a blessing for Salon that we get technocrats them. We not only know what they know, but they don't prove them with time. And the president, in wisdom, bring such people in for make them can help for push agriculture go before. But mind you, the foundation, the minister self will go, he don't do it own. Not so. And like way they build us, build everything that happens small thing, we get to the point Usa will get for which way you will say this Usa is really fine. I think that they happen. So making say soldier go, soldier come, the barracks remain intact, and we're ready for push agricultural productivity go before Salon. So this particular program, we they look for a 15-minute documentary we will be do. We're now on capacity building on the Okupur and Jala Agricultural Research Center. Then after which we will come back and get an interview and rapala with the new Minister of Agriculture. We now no other person but Professor Monty Jones. So stay focused on one.
Salon farmers them for plant and harvest for food and we farm them. Papul bakure set kasada inside we farm them. Chop no for beats alone problem.
The West African Agricultural Productivity Program, Waapp, is an economic community of West African states ECOWAS-initiated program with a series of projects funded by the World Bank. Waapp aims at making agriculture more productive and sustainable while promoting regional integration. The Waapp project pays specific attention to the provision of sub-regional framework on which ECOWAS countries share ideas on the development of agricultural strategies at national and regional levels for the generation, dissemination, and adoption of technologies considered as priority commodities to the implementing countries. Waapp Sierra Leone became effective on the 21st December 2011 and is expected to wind up in 2016.
As part of our project targets, what this project will be measured against, we are supposed to have delivered at least 5 improved technologies over the life of the project, which is 5 years. And to be able to do that, but not only meet that target, but to also now strengthen the country's research system to be able to deliver research going forward, this project Waapp has a mandate to support slurry.
Recently, with support from Waapp, we were able to release up to 8 new cassava varieties. And when these ones get to the farmers, yields will drastically improve.
We have released about 11 varieties. Those are technologies, we call them. 3 of those are from the mangrove swamp. The other 4 are also in the inland valley swamps. So if we talk about technology release, we have surpassed what is the basic requirement.
With capacity building being an integral part of Waapp, the Sierra Leone Agricultural Research Institute, SLARI, was prioritized as an institute that needs urgent capacity building if there should be improvement in the yield not only within the 10-year span of the project, but even in subsequent years.
You would wish to note that when Waapp started, the number of researchers that you have within SLARI was really very small compared to what you would want a standard agricultural research system to have. And the qualifications was also not as it would be desired.
SLARI is the hub of Sierra Leone's agricultural research, and Rokuper Agricultural Research Center has been selected to be a center of excellence for mangrove rice for the sub-region. Jala Agricultural Research Center strengthened to carry out adaptive research on cassava. But these centers were vandalized and occupied by the rebels as a base during the civil war in Sierra Leone, and the scars of the war could be seen on the infrastructures, thus inhibiting agricultural research growth in Sierra Leone.
The Okupo, for instance, Okupo Agricultural Research Center, which leads agricultural research on rice and other cereal crops, was a leading research institution in the entire sub-region, particularly on rice issues. And there have been a lot of technologies developed from that center. But during the war, that center was severely devastated. And if you go there at the time, if you were to go there at the time this project started, you will see the scars of war all over it, like you mentioned. And so it was a challenge for Waapp to come in and support the efforts the government was putting already to revive the Okupo Agricultural Research Center.
With those gaps in Sierra Leone agricultural research, Waapp empowers SLARI in a range of programs.
Waapp has funded a wide range of research studies. A significant number of our staff have either completed or are in graduate school pursuing masters and their PhD degrees, doctoral degrees, in various aspects of agricultural research and development in this country.
Since its inception in 2011, Waapp has clearly changed the face of infrastructure of SLARI research centers at Jala and Rokuper by rehabilitating and constructing many residential quarters, research labs, drying floors, and screen houses.
What the project does is to actually take a holistic approach to developing the capacity of SLARI. And we looked at infrastructural development, and then we looked at human capacity development, all of this, and then improving on the equipment for SLARI as well.
By the end of phase 1, we would have made a significant dent in terms of improving the human resource capacity to handle agricultural research in this country. And hopefully, if we go into phase 2, we have another big leap in terms of training people. So Waapp, as I said, the West African Agricultural Productivity Program, has single-handedly turned around agricultural research in Sierra Leone as far as SLARI is concerned, and can testify. And I, as Director General, I will go anywhere and testify as to what Waapp means to Sierra Leone and the neighboring countries.
Mobility was a serious challenge for the agricultural sector, posing a serious threat for the transportation of not only perishable farm produce but also workers to the two centers. Waapp, as part of its support in building the capacity of Slurry, provided vehicles, motorbikes, buses, trucks, generators, fiber speed, wooden boats, and many more that have served as boosters to productivity and sustainable drive.
Now for Jala Agricultural Research Center, I've seen this center from the late 80s to the present moment. I can tell you that with the presence of Waapp, we are actually witnessing a dramatic transformation of our capability. In the last few years, in addition to the support that Waapp has been giving to our research activities, we have seen significant capacity building. We have over 15 members of our staff have undergone training at master's and PhD level. A good number, we have about 5 of them have come back home. And when these ones are fully settled, I believe that is going to significantly improve our research capacity in this country.
Waapp provided us with 4 pickups and 3 Nissan Land Cruisers, 1 for the director, 2 for the Africa Rice experts. Now these pickups have helped our research scientists to go all over the country, go to Tomabo, Mbamsamba, and Bambo, Blama, and so on. They go over the country doing their work on rice research. Whereas before we only had one vehicle. They also have provided us with 2 trucks, 2 big trucks, 7-ton and 5-ton trucks. Then we have a brand new bus that they also give us, a Nissan 32-seater bus. This is helping us to take our research scientists whenever there is a workshop outside the center. We take the staff in that bus. They've also provided us with 2 boats, 1 speedboat, a 90-horsepower boat for the work in the mangrove swamp, and a wooden boat for taking our planting materials and so on. So I think in terms of transportation and logistical support, they have done very well. They provided us with 100 kV electrical generator and then 2 45 kV generators for lighting.
Waapp did not just limit its support to Slurry's infrastructure and mobility needs, but also extend its hand on human resource capacity building by funding 41 researchers from Slurry centers to benefit from grants to study in Masters of Philosophy, and PhD courses in their respective research areas in universities in Sierra Leone and abroad.
I'm one of the students supported by Waapp to pursue a course leading to the degree of Master of Philosopher in Agricultural Machinery Engineering at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. One of the challenges we have in Sierra Leone is low mechanization, because farmers cannot afford this expensive machinery to do their farming operation. Most of the farmers are resource-poor farmers. So I choose this area so that at least I can be able to move to a manual operated machines like transplanters, weeder, which you can be able to fabricate. This will help to at least for the poor farmers to adopt, that will improve the productivity.
A PhD student from Sierra Leone Agricultural Research Institute, one of the beneficiaries for Waapp Sierra Leone. I went to Ghana for my PhD studies at University of Legon, 4 years PhD study. I'm back home for my research work. For my thesis, I'm looking at genetic analysis for high starch, dry matter content, and root yield in cassava. The objective of this study is to identify farmers' perception for starch, dry matter content, and root yield. They're also to identify markers that can help to improve this trait in cassava.
Some of these students have now returned to their respective centers and are now championing research on rice and cassava in Sierra Leone.
It was very important, I can say, because I have been able to use morphological and molecular markers to actually select high-yielding accessions for breeding purposes. I used both the morphological and molecular markers. The molecular markers were used in order to confirm the diversity attained using the morphological markers, considering the influence of environmental conditions on the performance of genotypes.
I want to say, like, for the 3 Manor River Union country, Guinea and Liberia, Sierra Leone, we've taken the lead in terms of capacity with the help of the West African Agricultural Productivity Program. And the breeding for nutritional qualities in cassava, this is, however, the first research to be conducted. And towards the end of the study, I would have developed cassava varieties with yellow flesh and more nutritional qualities that will be given to our neighboring country, Liberia and Guinea, in order to make our contribution within the ECOWAS region and the Manor River as a whole.
The Rokuper Agricultural Research Center has been selected to be the center of excellence for mangrove rice farming for the sub-region, and the Jala Agricultural Research Center has been strengthened to carry out adaptive research on cassava.
You look at the billions of leones being expended by Waapp into agricultural research and development in this country. Rokuper Agricultural Research Center and Injala Agricultural Research Center, these are the 2 main centers of slurry that have benefited enormously. But mostly these 2 centers are going to turn around research in Sierra Leone.
The government of Sierra Leone has placed agriculture as a key pillar in its agenda for prosperity. With Waapp empowering agriculture, the realization of Sierra Leone attaining food sufficiency draws nearer.
Given all the support that has been provided in the three prongs of capacity development, in terms of the human resource development, the logistical support, the infrastructural support, and let me also mention within the infrastructural support the construction of one of the best labs in Africa that is being done at Rokuper. One would expect that slurry should be in a good position, or a far more improved position, to be able to deliver on its mandate. These 3 indicators attributing the driving away of the hunger period are pointers to the fact that, yes, research has done a lot to do that, but also through the extension system of the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Food Security.
Waapp has pledged to strengthen the capacity building process of slurry research centers to undertake quality research projects that will help the production of cassava and rice in Sierra Leone, making Sierra Leone self-reliant in agriculture.
Chopper for beats alone, problem.
Agriculture no salone, Waapp don't come for feed we, so let we all let me yore. It's Waapp.
Today we have a very important figure within the agricultural sector, not only on a regional basis, but on a global basis. And this person happens to be Sierra Leonean, and the Sierra Leonean who has made tremendous contributions towards agricultural development globally, regionally, and now we have him locally to, add spice to what we already have. And I want to welcome you, sir, Professor Monty Jones, our new Minister of Agriculture, Forestry and Food Security.
Well,
welcome to the Waapp on Focus program.
Thank you. I'm glad to be participating in this event today.
Okay. This particular interface with you is quite significant because Waapp has been focusing primarily on agricultural productivity through research, and of course that was what gave us the excitement to dialogue with you, since we now have a researcher at the helm of affairs within the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Food Security. But we may want to know, as an agricultural scientist, a researcher specifically, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about your career as a researcher.
Okay, thank you very much. Apparently, well, I started in Rokuper. At that time, it was the Rokuper Rice Research Station. I was the breeder there. And I would say that everything that happened to me later on stems from Rukupu, you know, because working there, I was asked to work in the mangrove swamps. And you wouldn't believe that I traveled along the Great Skiasis in particular. Almost every other week I was going down the Great Skiasis to work at some place they call Kibanka at that time. We passed through Yelibuya to get there, which means we'll travel down the length of the Great Skiasis, go towards the mouth of the sea at Yelibuya, and from Yelibuya we go to Kibanka. And yeah, I realized that the African indigenous rice species, which is known as Oryza glaberrima, is different from the Asian species, which is Oryza sativa, you know, could thrive under high salinity levels. And that was what gave me the, I would say, the enthusiasm to exploit the genetic potential of the African indigenous species. So when eventually I left Rukupu and joined the West Africa Rice Development Association, by the way, I should say that I served in Rukupu for about 13 years. And then I went to the West Africa Rice Development Association, now known as the African Rice, where I worked for another 12 years. It was when I was there that I developed the Erika rice, the new rice for Africa, which is a product of combining the genes of the African indigenous species and the Asian indigenous species. So we wanted to combine into one plant type, you know, the high yield, the high yield potential of the Asian rice and the wide adaptation of the African indigenous species. By the way, I should say that the Oryza glaberrima, that is the African indigenous species, has got very low yield potential. Okay. Because in the spikelet, in the panicle, the spikelets, you have one spikelet, one grain attaching to the panicle, or different branches of the panicle. Whilst in the Asian type, you have several grains, you know, in a sort of filaments that attach to the panicle. And so, high yield potential combining to greater level of resistance or tolerance to major stresses, greater level of weeds, ability to control weeds in the field. You know, those were the key issues that we were looking at, and we succeeded in doing that. And that was the first time over 50 years. Over 50 years for somebody to come up with what we call true to type varieties, representing the genomes of the two different species. You know, so I was able to do that. And that eventually, you know, earned me the World Food Prize in 2004. And then in the process of that, I worked with quite a number of countries in the region, in Africa. And after that, then I went to become the first executive director of the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, which coordinate and facilitate agricultural research for development in the continent, in Africa as a whole. So we were dealing with 55 countries, helping them to come up with their strategy documents on how to promote agricultural research for development. And my last 3 years, I was asked to serve as the chairperson of the Global Forum for Agricultural Research, that is at global level. And during that 3-year period, I succeeded in getting every region of the world, you know, to come up with a strategy to promote agricultural research for development. So the developmental aspect is part of this program. And today, these are some of the strategies that we are trying to adopt all over the country, all over the world. Sorry.
So without any doubt, I think we all know now that you could best be described as someone who has inscribed, you know, who has etched for himself a place in the scrolls of momentous. Mm-hmm. And of course, I have known you even before meeting you, and I've been talking about you before meeting you, okay, you know, based on the legacy that you have left, which is very good. And you mentioned Rukupu. Mm-hmm. And Rukupu was specifically targeted by the West and Central Africa Center for Agricultural Research and Development, mm-hmm, to become the center of excellence for mangrove rice. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that falls within your purview. And of course, Waapp as a project focuses on our priority agricultural commodities. But before we go to that, I may want to ask you, You have been within the research sector in Sierra Leone, and up to this point, what can you say about the state of research?
I believe that we've made considerable progress over the last few years, and I should mention that this Rokupu station has got a big history behind it, you know, because in the 60s and in the 70s, all the research in mangrove swamps relating to cat clays and things like that were done in Rokupu. Most of the publications that you will find relating to mangrove swamp research came from Rokupu. At one point, Rokupu station became the West Africa Rice Research Station, you know, which means it was feeding information, outputs from its work, you know, just sent to other West African countries for adaptation, for performance in those countries. You know, so Rokupu has got a big history. It was doing very well. Then eventually things went down a little bit, but I believe that it has climbed up a lot in the last decade or so. I think we've tried to see how we can get Rokupu to a situation where it should become a center of excellence. And when I got back to the country 2.5 years ago, you know, at that time I was serving His Excellency the President as the special advisor and ambassador at large for the country. You know, I had the opportunity to interact with the staff, you know, and to strategize with them on how they can conduct 21st century research work, you know, that will benefit the country. And I believe that they're doing a very good job. We may not have all the money that we need for Rokupu today. We may not have all the experts, professionals in various fields, but effort is being made to make sure that Rokupu gets the funding that it requires to be able to conduct research at optimal level, and at the same time that means that we need to upgrade the staff, and now you probably are aware that quite a good number of staff, you know, are being trained to MSc level, to PhD level. In fact, we need 20 PhD professionals, you know, that will be working in Rokupu, and we're working towards that. So I see a great future for that program, and we should realize that research has a key role in whatever we do as far as agriculture is concerned. It's research that will generate the technologies, it's research that will come up with the innovations that people will require, and so they have a key place in agricultural development program. And I'm so happy to note that they've not kept the slurry, you know, outside, slurry generally, outside the agricultural development program of Sierra Leone. It is linked onto the Ministry of Agriculture, and as such, Rokupu working under slurry, you know, is part of the system, you know, that is promoting agricultural growth and development.
Okay, before coming to what to the contribution Waapp has made as a project, there seems to be a challenge in the horizon, being that Guinea sees our position, or the position of Rokupu, as one that is enviable, and they want to claim the title from us, that they now should be regarded as the center, their research center as the center of excellence for mangrove. What do you think we can do to make sure that, based on the legacy of Rokupu?
Yeah, well, Guinea is a sister country, a friendly country, and we've been collaborating and working with Guinea for a long time now. I remember my days when I was at the Rice Research Station, you know, in Rokupu. I was actually asked to help to coordinate mangrove swamp research from Rokupu, and we were working in Guinea. I went to Furikaria, at that time I went to Kamsa in the north, where they have their mangrove swamp program, and we were supporting their mangrove swamp program from Rokupu. I don't think the leadership when it comes to mangrove swamp research has changed at all. I think Rokupu is still the #1 station for the whole of Africa. You wouldn't believe that even at that time, it's not just Guinea that we went to. We went to the Casamance in Senegal, we went to the Delta region in Nigeria. all with technologies generated from
Yes, and our understanding is that
I don't
even
think
the rice varieties Guinea is using now.
They are from us.
They are from Sierra Leone.
They are from Sierra Leone based on that program that we initiated with them. You know, but what I'm going to say is we shouldn't look at this as a competition. I think that we should try as much as possible to work together, you know, to promote mangrove swamp rice production in all West African countries. And I have no doubt that Rukupru will continue to show that leadership, because Rukupru has got what it takes to be able to deliver. It has the staff. We know that probably we need more staff, but it has the staff. And Rukupru, I believe, because of its long history, its long association, you know, with countries along the West Coast, as far as mangrove swamp research is concerned, I don't see us losing that position. And so what we need to do is to make sure that they get the funding, is to make sure that they keep the staff in place, happy to do their job, and will always be number one and on top.
So that brings me directly to what Waapp has been doing. Waapp started in 2011, November, and with the specific focus of bringing about agricultural productivity on the priority agricultural commodities of the country. And for us it is rice and cassava. And principally research was taken as the key factor, because I think that was the missing link, like we are saying, within all the West African countries. And that's because we didn't have improved varieties, you know, generated from within, and we always had the problem of having very, very low yield, which of course was the rationale for the Western Center for Agricultural Research and Development coming up with this kind of model. And of course, it is yielding dividend in many ways. And of course, within the period under review, since 2011 to now, Waapp has made tremendous contributions towards capacitating both Okupu and the Jala Agricultural Research Centers, because they are the primary ones that focuses on what Waapp is supporting. So how do you, because I know you have some knowledge about this, how do you view that capacity building?
First of all,
in relation to the challenges you mentioned.
Yeah, that's right. First of all, I would say that the Waapp program is like a baby to me, because I helped in conceptualizing this program for the entire continent. You know, we came up with the 8Th, the East Africa Agricultural Productivity Program, the SIPE, the Southern Africa Agricultural Productivity Program, and the Waapp. The Waapp was the first to get established, you know, in all of these countries, and we solicited funds from the bank to drive the agricultural productivity program for the entire continent, including West Africa. And Sierra Leone, like you say, is benefiting from that. Sierra Leone is one among several countries that started the program in November, as you say, in 2011. And I am very proud with what Waapp is doing for Sierra Leone. And I think that focusing on two staples is very important for us, because we're still struggling to see how we can get to self-sufficiency of these two crops. You know, cassava, for which Njala is taking the lead, you know, to develop appropriate cassava materials for us, and of course Rukupru working on rice. And I was looking at the documents and of course discussing this with some of my colleagues to know that quite a huge number of varieties have been tested, and some have been selected and actually released. You know, I think the total number of rice probably is as high as 14 varieties that have been released. And these included some of my baby Nericas, and also it included some of our own rock varieties. I noted rock 34 or something like that, you know, which
people used to call it Pakiam.
Pakiam, it is a traditional variety, and you wouldn't believe that this traditional variety came out of I think mangrove swamp. It was being cultivated in some parts of the mangrove swamps, you know, and now I'm glad to know that it's got to that stage where it's been released and it's doing well across probably the topo sequence, from what I read, you know, in various areas in Sierra Leone. When I say topo sequence, from upland through hydromorphic to lowland systems. You know, it's been tested and seems to be doing very well. So with these technologies available, and with the other associated things that the Waapp is undertaking, I do not see why we should not increase productivity, as you mentioned earlier on. You know, because these technologies, some of them are suited for mangrove swamp. In fact, they are suited across the various ecologies that rice is cultivated in Sierra Leone, and the various areas where cassava, you know, is produced in Sierra Leone. So, if we back this up with greater, and I'm underlining that, seed multiplication, so that they are available to the people that require them, the farmers, and even big-time commercial growers that will want to come and work in Sierra Leone are already working in Sierra Leone, growing rice or cassava. You know, no doubt that farmers will benefit considerably from this, and the country will benefit from it, because we need to attain full self-sufficiency, and only increasing production, agricultural productivity will take us there. You know, and Waapp, I must say, is contributing, you know, to this big success story, and it's one program that we should keep. I know that this program goes for 5 years, yes, and I know that we are into the last year of it, yes, and I know that it's going to be renewed for another 5 years, because it's generally a 10-year program. You know, so we should look to it and see that we incorporate aspect of seed multiplication. Not that you should do it, but you could support stations like Kobia. Is it Kobia? Yes. But incorporating, particularly in the next phase, machinery. This country needs a lot of machinery. I'm not talking of tractors, I'm not talking of combined harvesters. I'm talking of small machinery that will do the plowing of the land, till the soil properly, and allow for weed. You mentioned the weeders, yes, very good that they should bring in this. You've tested them and they've proven to do very well. So let's bring them in, and let's bring threshers, and if possible, harvesting machines. It may not be the big combined harvesters, because you know what is happening. The majority of our farmers have got small holdings, 1 hectare, 2 hectares, you know, and so basically I would say small machinery that we can maneuver within their fields and yet increase their produce. Increase their produce because of, for example, when it comes to post-harvest handling, and the percentage in Sierra Leone is very high, something like 48%. It's much higher than almost all African countries, because the average usually is less than 40%, you know, in most countries, but it gets up to 40%, but Sierra Leone is 48%. So if we can handle those aspects, I will see us increasing production dramatically, you know, within 1 or 2 generations. So in our new thinking, we should look at bringing those machineries, bringing in fertilizers, and helping the farmers to grow in terms of increasing their production, and in terms of linking that produce, that production, to the market.
So that brings us to the value chain approach, which I know the outgoing minister was emphasizing on, that our research should not just focus on production. We should talk about the value chain. That's exactly what you have mentioned. Do you think Slurry needs to modify its approach?
I think that Slurry should promote the innovative approach to technology generation, dissemination, and adoption, and even follow up on that through the other aspect of the value chain to the market and to the consumers. They should work across all of those. So in effect, the value chain approach that you are referring to, it should embrace research, but research should work with various entities, whether it's the extension or the producers or the producers or the marketers. All of this should be part of it, you know, because of the research that Slurry is undertaking. Because at the end of the day, that consumer is the one that will judge your product. And if you do not walk through to engage those consumers to know what kind of taste they want, what kind of grain type they want, in terms of color, in terms of shape, etc., etc., you wouldn't produce the right thing for those people. You know, so the value chain approach, I think, is what we should adopt. And I will agree with you that if they've not doing it, because I think they've started working towards that. I think I was fortunate to join the group just before this announcement came up that I should be Minister of Agriculture. I joined a Slurry group. We had a very good one-day session, you know, brainstorming on, that is why I use the term 21st century research, you know. So if there is one model that they should adopt, it should be the value chain approach, so that at least we cover all aspects of the value chain. And when we're talking of the value chain, I would like to emphasize too often, and this is something that you in Waapp should look at, too often we look at one side of that value chain. You know, we do not consider the other side of the value chain. If you look at food security generally, we're talking about the farming aspect, which we're doing very well, and which our research is doing very well, coming up with all these varieties and things like that. But we leave out the aspect of agro-industry, we leave out the aspect of value addition. You know, so that aspect of agribusiness is very important, and it's a sector that we shouldn't miss. It's all part of the value chain. So when it comes to one part of the value chain, we're doing very well. And in fact, if you look at the ratio between agro farming and agro industry or agribusiness, it is like 26% for Sierra Leone in terms of the value added by agro industry. When you say 26%, we're talking of something like 74%, you know, at the other end, farming. So our emphasis is usually on farming, research, to produce, production, things like that. You know, so the other aspect, we should look into it, and we should try to reduce the balance, you know, create a balance between the two aspects. And balance could be something like 40–60% or something, and then it will be good. I am saying this because the rest of Africa, the contribution of agribusiness is something like 38%. Sierra Leone, I say, is 26%. And for the world, including US and all these big powers, it is something like 78%. Only 22%, you know, is devoted to farming. And this is why if you go to America, for example, you have few farmers, but they produce for everybody. Yes. At the end of the day, most of their produce go for value addition and things like that. And that is why the president was preaching that we should go into value addition, value addition. It's very important, you know, because if you want to bring in foreign exchange into the country, you have to attain that level of self-sufficiency. Every extra produce should go to value addition and, of course, export to get annual foreign exchange for the country. And this is the new trend that we're going to go. So I totally agree with you that when we talk of production, we should look at those two areas, the value chain, take the complete value chain into consideration, but at the same time bear in mind that we need to earn for this country. And when it comes to that, it's not just rice or cassava, but all the other commodities, including even our forestry. We should exploit it to bring in money for this country, because if you look at what is happening in the mining sector today, in which we see a declining trend in the prices of those commodities, that you see in the food sector, you see that things like rice, the price remain quite stable, and apart from that, cassava is the same thing, and cocoa, coffee, more of cocoa, the price is just climbing up, and the demand for these commodities is quite high all over. You know, so nobody would come and tell you if you produce extra rice tomorrow or convert cassava into starch, which is of high demand in all over Europe. Nobody will tell you that we are not going to import those things from your country. We will import from our country, and this country will make a lot of money. I see I see a big future for agriculture in this country, and I believe that Waapp will help us to get there. You know, and of course, Slurry and all other entities, the Ministry of Agriculture, and all other entities that are involved in agriculture. I see agriculture propelling growth not only within agriculture, but in other sectors of the economy.
Taking the cue from that prophecy, I think it has a prophecy on the big future that agriculture has. So, holistically, like you have said, not only focusing on rice and cassava, or looking at the other crops, you know, what future does research hold?
Big future. Big future. I think the future of agricultural development depends on research. So it has a key role to play. And I think that we need to encourage our researchers. We need to encourage our people to go into research. We need to encourage our ladies to go into research. I'm not saying that they are not there. In fact, I was heartened once when I interacted with a group from IITA, it's Waapp. It's like a West African entity that is promoting, giving scholarship to students from West Africa region to study in the Ghana University and other universities in the region, you know. And I saw two Sierra Leonean female students, one working on cassava, the other one working.
They are from Slurry.
They are from Slurry, yes.
PhD
they are PhD students. Slurry is thinking of training up to 20 PhDs, and these two ladies are amongst them. And I thought that is really very good. But we would like to encourage ladies to come into agricultural research, our youths generally to come into agricultural research, and they can get training, you know, direct from Slurry or from the Ministry of Agriculture, because we're giving some support. And also we can look for international, in fact recently I was contacting a group, Ruforum from Uganda, you know, to come to Sierra Leone, to come and discuss, because they are also giving fellowship to Africans to study in universities in Africa, and occasionally they support people to go outside Africa, to Europe and to the US, you know, for studies, if those programs could not be done in Africa. So I will encourage our people to just go in and get trained and come back and become good professionals to promote agricultural research. And meanwhile, we should be looking for the money to support Slurry, and we rely on people like you in the agricultural productivity program, you know, the Waapp, you know, to support agricultural research. You are doing that right now. Augment it to go to the other half of the value chain, you know, so that we can promote agricultural.
So lastly, Prof, let's look at what model do you think is best workable for us in pushing agricultural development in this country? Or what model?
I'm not sure what you mean by model, but I will think that the value chain approach is very key to this, and the value chain approach should make sure that we get the appropriate technologies, should make sure that we add value to that technologies, should make sure that we define the path for marketing, whether it's domestic market or international market, and should make sure that the funds that are generated through all of these activities, you know, is being utilized to promote growth and development in our country. To be able to do that, not only do you rally just researchers, but you make researchers to work with other partners, you know, in the value chain. And that means that you have to encourage the youths, so that the youths are involved, whether in value addition or in marketing and things like that. And I'm using this your medium to reach out to the youths to say that agriculture wants you. Come, go into agriculture, stop what some of you are doing, running around the streets selling, maybe trying to get 10 millions or 10,000 euros or 100 euros a day, when they could go and open their own small business, small, medium-sized enterprises. They can do that. The youths can do that. and agriculture is and trade and industry. We're promoting that right now. So let them come. And we will go back to agriculture and we'll try to look for appropriate job for them. Self-employed job, in which tomorrow they will be employing their fellow youths to work with them, to work for them. You know, and so agriculture has got a bright future. Research has got a bright future. And Waapp will be centrally placed to help to promote all of this for Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure.
The West African Agricultural Productivity Program, what they call Waapp, don't come for make farmers want the way they process, sell, transport, and even where they eat rice and cassava. Benefit from them improve and research seeds we go make harvest plenty. We go also benefit from them improve machinery for production such as weeder and seeder, harvest and post-harvest, and processing. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa. Waapp don't come for a piece alone. Farmers them for plant and harvest for food and we farm them. A pool bakure send cassava, inside we farm them. Chop not for beef alone problem.
Agriculture no salone. Waapp don't come for feed we. So let we all let me own it. It's Waapp, Waapp, Waapp. We go feed we nation. Waapp, Waapp, Waapp. Agriculture go build we nation. We know say the benefits and for we all love. So Waapp want only farmers them for cooperative. We go put this cassava and rice plenty, plenty, oh. We go eat, we go sell, we go feed mama salon.
Yeah, I kick you for a pode ya tilanga Waapp. I can't touch him, tangi mo bulae. I can't maluka, mimi yo wa flap bati. I can't maluka, mimi yo wa kaya bati. Afuma wote matenga mo nafaka maluka mi. Tsubatale, kamu kwa kabonga. Tsuwaka ne maluka mi, ame mawa. So to beli nutane, no Sierra Leone, afuma mino.
Wapuga tuwa kotu dole jibo yo. Nyake bia mwama dole jibo yo. Mwengeli yaku ya mukbala kwa wala. Amake gifu dole mwa ya gbala. Ha! Waapp huilona, tanga gwelona. Keta ala hakisia belona. Ha! Komu hi owa kemo kwega sina. Komu hi abia kemo tega sina. Mame matenga majia sina. Nabonda umia Nugenda siya tuwa tatulia Waapp. Tuwa kotu koma ye mumao. Kotu pie salon lweji eli gloma. Fami akubo mu bemu pia go ya umia.
Waapp don't come for improve. Agriculture no salone. Waapp don't come for feed we. So let we all let me own it. It's Waapp, Waapp, Waapp. We go feed we nation. Waapp, Waapp, Waapp. Agriculture go build we nation.
Africa Agricultural Productivity Program, regional program. We come for make we grow more rice and cassava inside salon. Yeah, yeah. Then they train scientists for find out what seeds we go improve we agriculture. Yeah, yeah. And they support research, encourage farmers for use improved seeds for plants. So we go able feed we nation.
Tanga, where? Tanga, where? What to my soul? Send us somewhere no. Oh, Tomwedo, Waapp. I'm fana sakana kuyachan. Then I'm fanum. Bino dot in a tongue bano. Imatena manuo. Imatena manuo. Kawate kuya. Tanga koko koko aime mokuya. Bomba nkuya bufa kuya. Yeah. Imatena manuo. Imatena manuo. Aya. Chala boto kono mwano. Imatena mana. Mina matanga chimwe ni tanga kupwa nembo.
It's Waapp, Waapp, Waapp. We go feed we nation. Waapp, Waapp, Waapp. Agriculture go build we nation.
Sarabena walibena biambe, maloli maseba, badungwe ando sisake labangaleka Waapp. Baby abe mi yari togo imbing. Besi se sugu bakolo, basugu baba sisi kutimang. Sugu bata paralani kupintam, imbe benti mido kutu mute. cassava. Inside we farm them. Chop not for beats alone problem.
Agriculture na salone, Waapp don't come for feed we. So let we all le pione. It's Waapp, Waapp, Waapp. We go feed we nation. Waapp, Waapp, Waapp. Agriculture go build we nation.
Members say Waapp will facilitate the training of Sierra Leone Agricultural Research Institute scientists. Then they support local farmers there with vehicles, bikes, wooden and speedboats, generators, laboratory equipment and infrastructure. They also fund the research to improve seeds and planting materials. Waapp will also support the multiplication of foundation seeds for being distributed to farmers. They also introduce technology from other countries. Now the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Food Security now they supervise the ministry for this Waapp project. They partner with World Bank, Japanese government, West and Central African Center for Agricultural Research and Development, and the government of Sierra Leone.